Welcome to Gideon's Promise, the podcast with Jonathan Rapping. In the landmark 1963 decision Gideon v. Wainwright, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled every person accused of a crime in America must be provided a lawyer, regardless of their ability to pay. This podcast is about the people that uphold that promise, public defenders. These dedicated lawyers give voice to 80% of the people thrown into the system, and yet in the national discussion regarding justice reform, public defenders are largely overlooked. This show centers public defenders in that conversation. We will explore the critical role public defenders play in addressing a wide range of issues facing marginalized communities with subject matter experts, key opinion leaders, and people impacted by the American criminal legal system. Listen as a community of advocates discuss their work to strengthen public defenders and transform public defense. All right, welcome everyone. I am so excited to be here. Today is the day after election night, and we are joined today. We decided to do a special episode right after the election night with our guest here, a renowned guest, Dr. Benjamin Williams, who is the current sitting president of the Cobb County chapter of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, we all know as SCLC. And so we invited Dr. Ben to come down and join us here at Gideon's Promise Studios to get his thoughts on what has just happened or what is still happening this week post-election night. So, it was a long night. It's still a long day.
It was a long night. I have to say, I'm really excited to have this conversation because I think last night, like so many people, I was, hoping for a quick Democratic victory. I was hoping to go to bed at 10 o'clock and sort of the election would be in the bag. And I found myself feeling a little bit discouraged. And then I woke up this morning and I thought about this conversation with you, Doc, and I was uplifted because what I really sort of thought about was that, I think we often think of victory as winning big elections or big legislative victories. And I really thought about, Doc, because you've been doing advocacy for decades. And I think back to the days when you started doing advocacy and we sort of, remember the victories as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and we see those as the victories. And really, I think what I've learned from you, Doc, is that really those are the sort of the fruits of the victory. The victory is the work that happens every day, the decades of people on the ground pushing to make sure that those victories happen. And so I woke up this morning feeling more energized because while maybe the election didn't quite go the way I hoped, we didn't have the sweep we wanted, I realized that there's a lot of people on the ground fighting who really sort of made the possibilities that did happen last night possible and that will continue to fight today to push us to where we need to go. It's a reminder that the work isn't done. So I wonder, Doc, you've become sort of an ambassador to Gideon's Promise. We met you several years ago and we sort of fell in love with you and your work, and you fell in love with us and our work, and you've been really kind of an inspiration to us, the public defenders, the activists, the organizers we work with. Let me just ask you, what are your sort of feelings about what happened last night with the election and where we are now?
Well, John, Illy, let me also say I can't think of a better place to be on this day than in the room with the two of you reflecting on what is happening. And I am even more clear now than before how important it is to put the markers in the ground. But even more important than that is to understand how they got there. Mm. And too often, in our instant everything, we only focus in on the markers and we missed or we are not as attentive to how the markets got in the ground. Okay, and as we look at this election, it's another example of the importance of looking at how we have gotten to where we are now, even in this current struggle, So there has been a lot of progress, which keeps me hopeful that we'll continue to make progress. But it ain't going to happen the way in which we expect it to happen if the soldiers who are old and new to this struggle don't understand that really stamina and persistence are the watchwords.
Yeah.
So when you say stamina and persistence, we are in this kind of in this new age, this modern age where everything is quick bites, right? Social media, we need to get our information quickly, which means we also want to get our change quickly, right? So Dr. Ben, what do we need to do, the foot soldiers on the ground, to understand? What do we need to do to understand that this is not a quick moment in time? This is a marathon and not a sprint.
Okay. Well, first off, we've got to confront the anguish and the pain that goes with struggle, and understanding that it ain't all apple pie. Okay? And let me use this as an example. There are still far too many people who believe that their job is done when they go to the polls and vote, as opposed to understanding when I go to the poll and vote for whomever, that's my promissory note that I'm also in place to help you be successful. That has not really sunk in. Okay? It is the vote. The tabulations come up. We have won. And then guess what? The soldiers, or those who helped that to occur, far too many of them then take a recess to now celebrate, what do you call that, the new mile marker.
Yeah, no, that's really, that's insightful, Doc, because I think, we all remember after Barack Obama won the election, there was a lot of talk about how we were in a post-racial world, about how, we sort of finally arrived. And I think that the last 4 years, right, we've seen all of the progress, or much of that progress, stripped away. And I think that we realize that these victories are hollow if not accompanied by continued push on the ground from individuals. And we're in a moment now where where really the nation is kind of going through a reckoning with the fact that we are built on a foundation of racism, and that the intersection of race and economics is crushing some of our most marginalized communities. And in this moment, we're seeing, I think, a multiracial, a multi-generational movement to start to push for and demand that we do better. And I wonder, Doc, if you could talk about sort of the hopefulness of this that really cuts across age and race and class. And are we right to be hopeful, even though the election didn't quite turn out the way we wanted?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Hope is the staple that keeps people going. Okay? And those who, in fact, disappear, leave voluntarily, or even separate themselves, not knowing the impact of what they're leaving really is really harmful to the effort underway. Okay? The moment is larger than a moment. The movement is larger than the man, metaphorically. And see, too often, that's not something that we internalize. We have yet to arrive at the point that really the change that we're looking for is in us. In us. President Obama tried to make it very clear as he received all the accolades. And I heard him say any number of times in a different ways, please, don't leave me here by myself. Go back to your communities, okay, where you are affected by politics more so every day than any day from the White House. And we forgot that. And we're now in another critical moment in time. As was the case with Obama, the burden of bringing us to a post-racial society was put on his back. Post-racial society. We now have put on the back of Joe Biden to move us to a post-racist society. And that's unfortunate as well.
But, Doc, do we have, if we're going to, as you say, move to a post-racist society, I go back to, do we have enough boots on the ground? Because last night, and I'll be quite honest, Tuesday night, I went to bed at 11:30 because I was discouraged at how close these numbers were in these states, in our very own home state of Georgia right now, how some of the results won't even be in for a couple of more days. And so do we have enough boots? Did we have enough boots? Because it seemed like there were more when, when Barack Obama was running for his 2 terms than we have now. Have we become complacent?
Oh, without question. And my sister, that's the wrong question. Do we have enough boots on the ground?
Why is it the wrong question,
Well,
Doc?
because let me use some military metaphors.
And I'll try to keep up.
Yes, yeah. I have never seen effective SEAL teams exceed 8-9 people as they are deployed. And they are some of the most revered, fierce components of the military complex that exists. You got 6 or 8 SEALs going in on a mission to do A, B, C, and D. Not a battalion. You follow me? And that metaphor is worthy of at least transferring to how we get work done. Okay?
All right.
Waiting on what do you call that large battalion to come I think is a bankrupt proposition. So we've got to leave that and come up with a new mindset. With this new sign up of new soldiers, young soldiers who now bring with us social media tools that are out the gazoo. Now remember, we're a long way from a manual typewriter and a mimeograph machine that brought us a long way.
It did. You're right about that.
You follow me?
We should have it easier.
Well,
this generation of movement people, do you think?
That's seductive. I ain't gonna buy into it.
Okay, you're not gonna come down.
No. It ain't easier. It ain't easier because the struggle is real and continues to be hard. What we're up against, especially as we now deal with trying to at least move beyond the effects and the advantages of a racist society, that is even tougher than trying to at least agree that we're post-racial. There's too much at stake once you get into trying to change structural racism.
Yeah, so Doc, I think about this idea that we are in a post-racial society, that your generation did the work and the next generation now can reap the benefits. And in many ways, I think what happened last night, regardless of how this election ultimately turns out, what happened last night was a really stark reminder to everyone that there is still a huge segment of our society that doesn't truly believe in a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. And I think that for the public defenders we work with, for the law students that I teach, who maybe are thinking about going on and doing something else, I hope this is a clarion call to them that this work that they're doing is as important now as ever, that we need more people coming to the front lines of this fight for racial justice, for economic justice, for social justice. And so I think about that and I wonder, what message do you have for, young folks who maybe are waking up this morning saying, dang, there's so much work to do. I didn't realize it. I'm not sure what to do. Where do I fit in?
Well, first thing you do is you don't avoid, once you now have admitted yourself to this struggle, you do not avoid the hard classes for the easy classes. Okay? Mm-hmm. You're going to enroll in this and believe that we can get there by you taking the easy classes. That does not help us.
So what are the hard classes?
What the hard classes are these. One is, we've got more black faces in high places than ever in the history of our existence as people of African descent in this country. They are to be held accountable. They are to be held accountable. I'm very much influenced by some work that's done by Ibram Kendi, I believe. Ibram Kendi, his research has led him to this conclusion. There is no such thing or category called I'm not a racist. You either are a racist or you're working to be an anti-racist. I'm not a racist. There's no way to really follow that. And what we have, and what I think this election cycle is affirming for us, many of those black leaders, be they elected officials at the state or levels in particular, at the municipal levels, in district attorney's office, if they don't understand that their election is to move in there to be transformational, we got a problem. And the problem is compounded if we don't feel the same sense of urgency to make them live up to the expectations that we generally have when people of color now arrive at those stations and they are in charge. That's one of the hard lessons.
But so here in Atlanta, right? We're, our headquarters is here in Atlanta. Predominantly black leadership. Historically, for decades, Atlanta has been black-led. But yet, the disparities, especially disparities in the black community here in Atlanta and Metro Atlanta, are still very great, especially the economic disparities. Why is that?
Well, trying to dichotomize social justice and economic justice, to me, does not compute. They are twins in that one egg. I'm not saying that they're identical twins, but they're twins in that one egg. So we've got to see the union between our advocacy for social justice with the inclusion of economic justice. Focusing in and identifying what the target is really important. In Atlanta, Black Mecca, okay, the revered place for a number of people, not only in this country, but outside of the country, what Atlanta represents. And I'll admit there's been a strong history in Atlanta. The new soldiers, the new boots on the ground have got to understand that historical context and move forward with it, as opposed to the tremendous amount of individualization that still exists. I can't count the number of people who I run into, and every one of them want to start their own 501c3. You know, that they see that the proliferation of me going into my enterprise, as opposed to looking around to see what enterprise that I can become a part of, mitigates our efforts of moving away from as what? 5 fingers on a hand, as opposed to what? A fist. In spite of the fact that from Black Panthers all the way to Black Lives Movement, what has been carried forward is what? The symbol of the fist. That has not really been internalized as a part of what is necessary.
So Doc, you know, this is interesting, because I'm hearing you talk and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, we are headquartered in Atlanta. You do your work here in Atlanta primarily and largely, you know, when we look at Atlanta, we have all of the mass incarceration problems of any other major city, and yet we've had Black leadership in the district attorney's office, in the mayor's office. We've had Black judges on the bench. We have a problem with homelessness, yes, that also is disproportionately impacting Black people. We have problems with underfunded education, which is also defined by race in Atlanta. And I think what I'm hearing you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that while we focus on these national elections and we pull for the people we pull for, whatever happens in those elections, we can't let up doing the work that we're doing on the ground in the communities where we work, because whatever happens at the national level, it's not going to change what's happening at the local level without people on the ground pushing.
Yeah, we've got to, of course, carry out our civic responsibilities at all levels. But we've got to understand, we are most affected by those who are closest to us. If I understand the attraction of the celebrities when they come out, who's running for president, you follow me? And yet and still, there's not that same amount of understanding as to who my state representative is, or who my state senator is, or who represents me on the school board, or who is in the DA's office. I mean, what's this real deal if we're pursuing justice and we don't have a real understanding of the frontline people called public defenders?
Well, I'm glad.
I mean, that's really where the focus ought to be. The advocacy ought to be, if they, by design, are set up to be the assurance that the indigent people who primarily fill our jails, if you will, are to get justice, then if we want to yell in mass incarceration, then the line begins in front of the public defender's office, understanding what they do and what we can do to make sure they got the resources and the other kinds of support to stand up against well-funded prosecutors who, in fact, are on a different agenda that's more about win-lose rather than justice.
So Doc, I think about it because really when I appreciate you bringing it back to public defenders, and I'm not surprised because you're an ambassador and you've been a cheerleader for public defenders for as long as I've known you. And what I love about you is you're really one of the few people that have been in this game for decades who really appreciates the role of public defenders.
Now I wasn't always there. Please understand it. But in my learning, and as I began to look at how is it that we really, if we're serious, impact, mitigate mass incarceration, my analysis says you start at the water's edge. You start at the water's edge. Who do we have in place to really represent the masses of indigent people who are committed to indigent defense? Who are committed to indigent defense?
Mm-hmm. So Doc, you made a statement that you didn't walk into this space, right? What key thing or key moment led you to say, I need to be invested in public defense reform? I need to be invested in criminal justice reform. Is there a moment or a snapshot that led you to say, this is what I'm going to spend the next quarter of my life?
And that change for me was not it was evolutionary, because the more I sensed that I did not know enough about this predicament called mass incarceration, that incentivized me to learn more. Okay, and in my efforts to learn more, I happened to run into something that I still believe is unique, and yes, I'm very much committed to Gideon's promise, but that's based upon earned regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's not personality driven. I mean, the folk who run this organization are nice people.
We appreciate that, Doc.
If you follow me, but more important, the mission to which they are committed is really the magnet. The magnet.
Right. So no, Doc. I mean, I know all of us sitting in this room. We certainly are not trying to suggest that the outcome of this election isn't important, and we're all hoping that we move on to a new administration with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But I think what we also all recognize that I think is really important to say is that whatever happens in this election, the work we're talking about on the ground is going to have to continue, no matter who's in the White House. And I hear you saying that you appreciate that public defenders are critical to that work on the ground. And so let me ask you, Doc, you're an inspirational man. You inspire me frequently. What do you say to the public defenders out there, many of whom you've met, you know? What do you say to them when they wake up today and they're feeling discouraged? They feel like what happened last night suggests that maybe all the work they've been putting in just isn't bearing the fruit they hoped. They're wondering if this is the right place for them to be. What do you say to them, Doc?
Well, a part of what I would try to say is the comfort for how they feel in the moment is a result of their familiarity with the stories of struggle. The comfort that you can get from however you feel in the moment can, to some extent, be assuaged by your connectivity to, your familiarity with the struggles. It took 10 years to pass the Voting Rights Act. 10 years. And less time than that for it to be dismantled. Okay? The other thing, too, is I would say to public defenders, as I always try to say, please do not box yourself into a mindset that you can do it alone.
Nobody can do this work alone.
Mm-hmm. Okay? Please don't. Don't recess to that. The other thing I would say, you increase the probability of justice, period, when you have a connection that is solid with the communities in which you work.
Mm. It's important.
Yeah.
Find those organizers. If they don't know where you are, you invite them to be where you are so y'all can learn and now create a relationship from something that both parties profess to be of interest to them. You follow me? Others have to school me. I've had to learn, I've got a doctorate degree. You follow me? But I've had to learn from others who knew a lot more about what I professed my interest to be in criminal justice reform.
Well, Doc, I also think, in this moment, there are people who are really suffering. And I think that there was a loud and clear message last night that there is a huge segment of society that they can't count on to come to their aid, to lift them up. And I think when people are suffering in all sorts of areas, either because they don't have adequate education, they don't have adequate health care, mental health services, substance abuse counseling, they don't have adequate housing, all of those challenges, if we don't treat them, if we don't address those social ills, it leads the most vulnerable people into the criminal legal system. So ultimately, public defenders are the people who are there to deal with the impact of our neglect in all of those areas. And I think that for that reason, public defenders really are critical to the broader solution. And I think you get that, Doc, and that's what I really appreciate about it.
And let me just say something about that too, Rap. I think what you talked about, Doc, about understanding the communities you support, public defenders being in the community, right? Because at the end of the day, Doc, a lot of the work you've been doing on the ground as a person representing the community to say, even in your own county, right? Cobb County does not have a brick and mortar, full standing public defender office. They have court appointed counsel.
Let me be the first to say this. The reputation of public defenders, as I've come to know them, is frequently tarnished, defiled. And I accept what folk from the street call public pretenders. And that's regrettable. That's regrettable. And, that's one of the things that's on my agenda, since we now have a new district attorney who has influenced me that he is about transformation.
Okay,
is now to begin to lift that up. We also have an influx of judges who are new. See, we got to sit down holding elected officials accountable and bring those matters of concern, because they are all a part of this thing we call the criminal justice system.
And we need to make sure when they are all sitting at the table that the public defender is also sitting at the table. Because what I found as a person who comes from the community, decisions get made for us, about us. Things are said in narratives, as this is why we have 2.3 million people incarcerated, over 500,000 in Georgia, which leads the country in incarceration rates. The narrative that's created about us, if we don't have our representatives, who I now that I have a love for public defenders, nothing's going to change is not going to happen.
And I believe that true public defenders are really missionaries, and those of us who can help them to make the connections so that they can be tied to communities have got to step forward. Okay? Have got to step forward. I think that they're up to their necks in doing the best that they can, and that's why it's important that all of this advocacy begins now to find itself to the communities in which they're embedded. To first of all, ask the question, where are the public defenders?
I love that question.
Where are the public defenders? Asking it not so much to be calling them out, but to really find out where they operate.
Right.
You got me? And then move towards them with an objective in mind that we are here to assist you in that massive job of helping us to end mass incarceration.
So, Doc, I'm talking to you today, and I have to say my spirits are already lifted because really, I mean, I think this conversation is just a reminder that the work we've been doing at Gideon's Promise for 13, going on 14 years, continues to be the really critical, necessary work. And while we're fighting and pushing for the right people to be in office, for legislative change, those are things we need to do while we continue to do this critical work.
Yep. And the other piece that goes along with that, there is a connection between law and politics. Law and politics. I have very little confidence that the purist who wants to try to separate those will be successful.
Mm-hmm. So as we wait today, tomorrow, the end of the week,
or how long it
or
takes.
however long it takes, it might even take up to the day of Inauguration Day, we are going to continue, and I encourage everyone to keep up the fight. I am so overwhelmed, Dr. Ben, with your presence here because I'm tired. Our defenders are tired.
You're too young to be tired.
Well, listen, that 13 years was like 13 dog years.
Well, and that's your calculations for convenience. But I think about Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes.
In 1964. And her years before she came to Boardwalk with a small a team of SEALs to push their way into and be seated at the convention. Mm. Yeah. And her war cry was she was there after years and years and years because she was sick and tired
of being
sick and tired. So I hear it, but that's a luxury in terms of where we are.
Well, Dr. Benjamin Williams, I appreciate you being here with us. Post-election views, 2020.
And let me add, Illy, I appreciate you being here as well. And I also want to just say that you are someone who has been doing such important work for so long. And the day after what might be the most important election of modern history, you would choose to spend it here talking to us to give an uplifting message to public defenders across the country, fighting this fight in obscurity. That means the world to us, to the community that we serve, right? That really, you can say they're important. You being here today, spending this day here, is evidence that you believe. That's critically important. So I thank you as well.
Okay. Glad to be here.
And I'm going to carry the movement is bigger than the man. And so with that, we'll wrap up this show. This is Ilham Askia.
And this is Jonathan Rapping.
Wrapping it up. Thank you for listening to Gideon's Promise, the podcast, with Jonathan Rapping. For more information on the topics covered and featured guests, please visit our website at gideonspromise.org. And finally, please subscribe, share, and let us know what you think.